Asha Brindle was not ordered to wash the Alpha King's war cloak because it was dirty. She was ordered to make it harmless. The cloak waited in the lowest rinsing chamber of Blackmere Keep, spread across a white moonstone slab beneath 7 hanging chains. No nobles watched from balconies. No ladies laughed behind jeweled hands. No court had gathered to enjoy a servant's disgrace. This was quieter. Worse. Only 4 people stood in the chamber: Asha, Lord Commander Valen Corveth, a moon priestess with ink-black eyes, and the royal quartermaster holding a ledger with 1 blank line waiting for Asha's mark, clean of unlawful memory. Not clean of blood. Not clean of mud. Clean of memory. Asha kept her hands still at her sides. The black wolf fur cloak hung heavy with rain, smoke, and battlefield cold. Its silver clasps lay open like teeth. Alpha King Torren Malvek had worn it through the northern campaign, but it did not smell like him now. It smelled of wet iron, burned pine, and sealed paper. A command scent. Asha knew it because she had spent half her life washing noble lies from cloth. Blood thinned. Mud surrendered. Wine softened. But command stains hid deep in seams under clasps in the folds where men gripped fabric while giving orders they hoped no one would remember. Her mother had taught her that before the crown took her mother's debt, and tied Asha to the war laundry oath. Clean what is given. Question no stain. Wake no royal cloth. Valen stepped closer, polished boots stopping outside the carved water channel. He was handsome in the careful way of a blade kept clean by other men's hands. You understand the task, he said. Asha did not look at him. I understand the ledger. Then speak it. She swallowed. If the cloak rinses clear, I mark it free of unlawful memory. And if you refuse, the refusal is treated as contamination by the washer. The priestess dipped 2 fingers into pale moonwell water. False contamination may be punished as false witness. There it was. Not a public trap. A private one made of procedure. Asha could clean the cloak and help bury whatever clung to it. Or she could refuse and become the stain. Valen's voice softened. No one is asking you to lie, girl. Only to finish your work. That softness frightened her more than shouting would have. Men like Valen did not need cruelty when law could carry it for them. Asha stepped to the slab and placed both hands on the cloak. It flinched. The movement was tiny. The priestess missed it. The quartermaster missed it. Valen did not. Asha pressed her fingers into the wet fur. Something tightened beneath the seams. Not a voice. A hold. The cloak was not trying to speak. It was trying not to be scrubbed empty. Begin, Valen said. Asha drew the bone brush through the black fur. Moonwell water ran into the floor channels, darkening first with ash, soot, rain, and wolf sweat. Then a thin silver thread appeared in the runoff and curled back toward the cloak instead of flowing away. A memory thread. Valen saw her pause. Is there a problem? No. Then rinse deeper. Asha moved the brush toward the inner lining where royal garments kept what they were never meant to admit. Beneath the collar, her fingers found a hidden stitch. It was not thread. It was black command wax dried flat and sewn under the lining. Asha's hand went cold. Command wax could carry a royal seal. It could move orders faster than a king could ride. It could authorize retreat, execution, or slaughter before the king ever opened his eyes. Valen said quietly, campaign wax. Lawful. Why was it sewn into the cloak to keep orders moving when the northern roads froze? Orders from whom his answer came too smoothly. From the crown. Not from the king. The difference mattered. The priestess moved closer. Washer continue. Now Asha understood. Valen did not only need the cloak cleaned. He needed a laundry oath servant to certify that its memory was lawful. Once she signed the ledger, the cloak would become proof against itself. Whatever it carried would be declared clean because the washer had signed it silent. She lowered the brush. The cloak trembled beneath her palm. If she pulled away now, the memory thread would sink back into the seam and close like every witness forced back into silence. Warcloth did not answer noble titles. It answered craft, contact, and witness. It answered hands trained to know when cloth was being forced to lie. So Asha made a choice. She pressed the inside of her wrist against the hidden command wax. The old laundry oath scar split open. Pain cut hot through her arm. Her blood did not fall by accident. She pushed it into the wax seam with the heel of her hand binding oath blood to command stain before anyone could stop her. The priestess hissed. "What have you done?" Asha's voice shook, but she did not let go. "My work." The cloak had not chosen Asha's blood. It had answered the only hands in the room trained to know when cloth was being forced to lie. The cloak convulsed. The moonstone slab cracked. Silver water rose from every floor channel and rushed sideways into the torn lining. The black fur opened along its seams, revealing buried memory in sharp fragments. A route stitched in silver. A time mark before dawn. A royal seal pressed into command wax while the king's scent was absent. Valen lunged. Asha shoved the moonwell basin with her free hand. It overturned across the slab, flooding the cloak before his fingers could close. The memory locked. Now it could not be scrubbed away. Valen froze with one hand in the air. Anger broke through his discipline. "You ignorant little washer!" Asha kept her bleeding wrist against the seam. No. An ignorant washer would have cleaned it. The chamber doors opened. Alpha King Torren Malvek entered alone. No crown. No guards. Only a torn black tunic, rain-dark hair, and amber eyes, carrying the controlled violence of a wolf that had followed a scent it did not trust. His gaze went first to the cloak, then to Asha's bleeding wrist, then to the silver route burning through the fur. Valen bowed. "Majesty, the washer has contaminated the verification." Torren did not answer him. His eyes stayed on the cloak, and Asha saw the moment he recognized the command wax. Not surprise. Recognition. Her stomach sank. He had known command wax existed. Torren's voice was low. "Who sealed this chamber?" "I did," Valen said. "To protect your campaign record." "My campaign record?" "The northern pacts are unstable. If cloth memory invents guilt, 5 borders may rise before winter. I buried 1 village to keep 5 from burning, Majesty. Call it murder if you still have the luxury." Asha looked at Torren, waiting for denial. It did not come quickly enough. His face hardened with something worse than ignorance. Memory. He had signed the campaign absolution before seeing the northern road. He had allowed his seal to travel faster than his body. He had trusted war to men who promised speed, order, and survival. Valen had used that trust. But Torren had given him the door. The cloak pulled tighter around Asha's wrist. Silver water ran across the fur and formed one line in the black lining. The first command was not forged. It had only been given room to become murder. Torren went still. Valen's smile did not reach his eyes. It looked less like triumph than accounting. "This is why memory must be washed," he said. "It does not understand necessity." The cloak rose from the slab, heavy and dripping. Its black fur spread like a wounded wolf's back. It did not point at Valen. It did not shield Asha. It turned its open collar toward Torren Malvek. The warcloth did not want a witness to watch. It wanted the king to wear what had been done in his name. Torren's wolf snarled beneath his skin. Asha's wounded wrist burned against the seam, holding the memory open by pain alone. Then the cloak spoke through the silver water in a voice like wet fur dragged over stone. "If he wears me, he will remember the order he signed before the slaughter began." Asha's wrist burned where oath blood held the seam open. If she let go before Torren took the cloak, the command would become clean again. She knew it with the terrible certainty of someone who had spent years learning how cloth lied when powerful hands forced it quiet. The silver root still glowed through the black lining. The hidden command wax pulsed beneath her bleeding wrist, warm as living skin. Every heartbeat sent pain up her arm, but pain was not the danger. Silence was. Valen Corvith saw her weakening. "Remove her hand," he ordered. The moon priestess stepped forward at once, pale water still dripping from her fingers. "The washer has contaminated the seam. Her oath blood has entered royal command wax. Any memory shown now may be twisted by servant interference." Asha did not look at her. She looked only at Torren Malvek. "If I let go, the seam will close," she said. Her voice was hoarse, but it carried through the low chamber. "And your memory will become clean again." Torren stood beside the slab still as a blade held over judgment. The cloak floated between them, dripping moonwell water from its torn lining. Its open collar faced him like a wound waiting for the body that made it. The cloak could show Asha evidence, but only the king's body could carry the command weight back to its source. Torren understood. Asha saw it in his face before he moved. Not fear of pain. Not fear of the cloak. Something harder. The fear of a man who had spent years believing distance made command necessary only to find that distance might have been where murder learned to breathe. Valen moved between him and the cloak. Majesty, this is no longer verification. This is unlawful memory extraction. Torren's eyes did not leave the black fur. Step aside. A king who signs war authority signs what it must become after the roads freeze. The sentence struck deeper than any accusation. The priestess lowered her gaze. The quartermaster went rigid. Even Asha felt the chamber tighten around those words. Valen had not denied the command. He had not denied the village. He had pushed the blood back toward the hand that first gave permission. Torren looked at him then. What did I sign? Valen's smile did not reach his eyes. Victory before delay. Movement before debate. Authority before thaw. The northern road would have killed 3 packs while you waited for perfect reports. What did I sign? The growl in Torren's voice made the chains above the slab tremble. Valen's answer came clean. A lawful pre-dawn mobilization order. Lawful did not mean clean. It only meant the stain knew where to hide. Asha's grip tightened on the seam. There it was. Not forged. Lawful. Torren had not ordered the slaughter with his mouth. But his seal had arrived before mercy did. Torren reached for the cloak. The priestess raised her bowl. Majesty, if you wear contaminated war cloth before cleansing, you bind your body to whatever the washer has awakened. Asha almost laughed. It came out as a breath. That is the point. Torren looked at her. For one dangerous moment, the chamber held only the sound of dripping water. He did not soften. She was grateful for that. Softness would have been an insult while her wrist was burning open to keep his truth alive. What must I do? He asked. Asha swallowed against the pain. Do not command it. His jaw tightened. Wear it, she said, and do not fight what it remembers. Valen's expression sharpened. Majesty, this is how servant witchcraft enters royal blood. Asha finally looked at him. No, this is how cloth returns what men sewed into it. Torren took the cloak from the air. The moment the black fur touched his shoulders, the chamber changed. Not with light, with weight. Torren dropped to one knee, as if an unseen hand had driven the whole northern road into his spine. The silver clasps snapped shut across his chest. Water poured from the fur, but none of it touched the floor. It rose around him in a circle, carrying scent cold and command. His eyes flashed amber. Then, silver. Asha nearly lost her hold. The seam tried to close. She pressed harder, biting back a cry as the command wax drank more oath blood. The cloak shook around Torren's shoulders, dragging him backward into the night before the northern campaign. A memory opened inside his body. A war room before dawn. Frost on the windows. Torren standing over a map with one hand braced on the table. Exhausted from 3 border raids in 2 nights. Valen stood across from him, younger by only a few weeks, but already calm in the way he was calm now. The roads will freeze by morning, memory, Valen said. If every movement waits for your hand, we lose the northern line. Torren's memory self stared at the map. Red stones marked villages. Black stones marked rebel routes. White stones marked civilian roads. I authorize mobilization, Torren said. Not cleansing. Mobilization requires discretion. Not cleansing. Valen bowed. Then write it so. Torren took the black wax seal. Asha watched his hand press it into the command strip. Lawful. Broad. Dangerous. The memory snapped forward. Torren slept at a campaign table, still armored, one hand bandaged wolf exhausted beneath his skin. Valen stood over the same command wax. The original order remained intact, but beneath it he added root priority, threat interpretation, and emergency authority through war law. He did not forge the first command. He taught it to become worse. A courier entered. Not a commander. Not a noble. The royal quartermaster from the rinsing chamber, younger in the memory, carrying a black dispatch case. The same man now standing beside the ledger. Valen handed him the altered order. If they shelter under surrender cloth, treat the cloth as rebel concealment. The quartermaster's face tightened. By the king's seal, by the authority he signed before dawn. The memory lurched. Torren gasped under the cloak, one hand clawing at the silver clasp. His wolf snarled so violently that the water around him rippled like fur. Asha's knees weakened. Valen stepped close to her. "Let go, girl, before you break your oath completely." Asha kept her wrist against the seam. A clean command can still carry a dirty road. Torren heard her. His head lifted. The cloak dragged him into one more fragment, a blank authority scroll on the war table 3 nights before the campaign began, signed with Torren's seal before any village name had been written. Valen's voice sounded behind him, calm as winter law. "You wanted victory before dawn," he said. "I gave your seal teeth." The cloak tightened around Torren's throat. And the next memory did not show the village. It showed the blank authority scroll opening by itself, waiting to reveal who had asked the Alpha King to sign it first. Asha had expected the cloak to show a murderer. Instead, it showed a system that made murder writable. The blank authority scroll unfolded inside the silver water, pale as bone and empty, except for Torren Malvek's royal seal waiting at the bottom. No village name, no road, no target, no mercy clause. Just a sealed space large enough for another hand to decide what the king had meant after he was no longer in the room. Asha's wrist throbbed against the open seam. The command wax drank her oath blood in slow-burning pulses, and every pulse kept the memory from sinking back into the cloak. Her knees wanted to fold. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she knew the rule her mother had taught her over basins of cold war water. A stain could be hidden, a seam could be shut. But once oath blood fixed a command wax memory to Moonwell, rinse no washer, priestess, or commander could scrub it clean until the cloth finished speaking. The moon priestess realized the old law had turned against her. Her face tightened. This memory is unlawful. Asha forced air through her teeth. "No. It is preserved. You are not authorized to interpret royal cloth. I am authorized to rinse it. And you have contaminated the rinse." Asha looked at the silver route burning across the cloak. Command wax, oath blood, Moonwell water. Preserved stain. Old laundry law. The priestess went still. Torren noticed. So did Valen. The Alpha King knelt under the cloak's weight, one hand braced against the cracked moonstone slab, the black fur locked around his shoulders like a beast refusing to let go. His breath came hard. Silver water circled him, carrying the smell of frost, ink wax, and distance. Distance most of all. The blank authority scroll expanded in the memory. A war chamber appeared 3 nights before the northern campaign. Torren stood at the map table, younger by exhaustion more than time. Around him were not soldiers in mud, but clean hands in ceremonial sleeves. Council, elders, road law keepers, the royal quartermaster, and the same moon priestess now standing in the rinsing chamber with pale water dripping from her bowl. Asha heard the quartermaster beside the ledger make a small sound. He knew what came next. Torren's memory self stared at the blank scroll. "Why is there no road written?" The priestess in the memory answered before Valen could. "Because roads change after freeze. A named order dies when the snow closes. A blank authority survives weather." The elder beside her added, "It is not a command, Majesty. It is permission for command to continue moving." Asha felt Torren's body tense beneath the cloak. Present Torren whispered, "I remember this." Valen's voice cut in from the chamber. "Of course you do. You signed it." The memory priestess touched 2 fingers to the blank parchment. A command becomes clean when the washer signs and the priestess seals. The words struck Asha harder than the pain in her wrist. That was why she had been brought here. Not to clean cloth. To complete the last step of a system older than this one slaughter. The king signed distance. The commander filled it. The courier carried it. The cloak wore it. The washer erased it. The priestess sealed it clean. Asha looked at the priestess in the present. "You were never here to witness the rinse." The woman's mouth thinned. Asha's voice shook, but sharpened. "You were here to bless the silence after I signed it." The quartermaster backed 1 step from the ledger. Too late. The cloak noticed. Silver water snapped toward him across the floor, not touching his skin, only rising in front of the ledger he held. The pages fluttered open by themselves, and a second image appeared, a copied root folded under the verification record marked with the same blank authority number as the scroll in the memory. The quartermaster had carried the altered order, but his ledger had carried the first blank. He clutched the ledger to his chest. I was ordered to copy what command provided. Asha's bleeding hand trembled. Then why is the first blank hidden under a cleansing record? He said nothing. Valen did. Because records must survive what people cannot, he said. You want one villain because one villain is easy to hang. But a border does not hold because a king sees every road. It holds because the law moves while he sleeps. Torren lifted his head. The cloak tightened around his throat, as if forcing him to hear from inside his own authority. Valen faced him fully. Now no false softness left. You wanted victory without delay. We built the law to obey you. Torren's eyes flashed amber. I did not ask for villages to burn, no, Valen said. You asked not to be slowed by the kind of details that make kings hesitate. Silence spread through the chamber. Asha hated that sentence because it was not simple enough to dismiss. Torren had not stood on the northern road and ordered surrender cloths treated as rebel masks. He had not named the village. He had not spoken cleansing with his mouth, but he had signed a road before he knew who would be standing on it. Asha looked at him through the silver water. Blank authority is not forgery, she said. It is permission waiting for someone cruel enough to fill it. Torren flinched. Not from her tone, from the truth of it. The cloak was not accusing the hand that forged. It was accusing the hand that left space. The priestess raised her bowl high. Enough. By moon law, contaminated rinse must be sealed before it infects royal memory. She flung pale water toward Asha's wrist. Torren moved, but the cloak dragged him down before he could reach her. The water struck the seam. Pain tore through Asha's arm. The memory flickered. The quartermaster lunged for the ledger, trying to tear out the copied route. Asha saw him move and acted before thought could frighten her. With her free hand, she seized the edge of the overturned basin and kicked it toward his feet. Moonwell water splashed over the ledger. The hidden copy burned silver. The quartermaster screamed and dropped it. The pages rose into the air, spreading above the chamber like wet wings. Beneath Torren's seal, other signatures began to appear, one by one, names that had approved the blank authority system long before Valen filled a road with blood. Torren stared upward, breathing hard under the war cloak. Asha held the seam open with the last strength in her body. The first signature beneath Torren's was not Valen's. It belonged to the moon priestess. The woman who had come to seal Asha's silence had signed the silence first. Asha had thought Valen filled the blank. Now the cloak showed who had taught the blank how to become clean. The moon priestess did not deny her signature. She only lifted the bowl higher, as if water could drown ink already burning in the air. Her name glowed beneath Torren's seal, silver and wet, sharper than any blade in the rinsing chamber. Torren knelt under the war cloak's weight, his breathing rough, his amber eyes fixed on the floating signatures. Why is your name beneath mine? The priestess's face became still. Not afraid. Worse. Certain. I sealed what the crown had already made lawful. The words moved through the chamber like cold water. Asha felt the cloak tighten beneath her bleeding wrist. The seam was still open, but barely. Command wax drank at her oath scar in slow pulses, and each one stole heat from her arm. If she let go, the memory would close. If she held on much longer, the seam might take more than blood. Torren tried to rise, but the cloak forced him down again. Valen watched him without satisfaction now. Almost without expression. The commander no longer looked like a man hiding behind his own lie. He looked like a man revealing a law everyone had used, and no one had wanted named. Torren's voice lowered. Explain the seal. The priestess lowered the bowl slightly. Blank authority scrolls require 3 proofs before they may travel. Royal permission, temple pre-seal, war archive copy. Asha looked toward the quartermaster. He had gone gray. The ledger in his arms trembled. The priestess continued, calm as ritual. The commander cannot fill what the crown has not permitted. The courier cannot carry what the archive has not copied. The washer cannot cleanse what the temple has not prepared to seal. Asha understood then. and the understanding made her stomach turn. Her mark was not a signature. It was the last lock. A command becomes clean when the washer signs and the priestess seals, she said, remembering the line from the memory. The priestess looked at her. Yes. Asha's voice shook, but it did not break. A washer's mark does not make cloth clean. It only proves who was forced to say it was. For the first time, the priestess's eyes sharpened with anger. Careful oath, girl. No, Asha whispered. I have been careful all my life. That is why your cloth stayed clean. The silver water snapped around the quartermaster's ledger again. He clutched it harder, but the pages were already opening. Row after row of copied authority numbers appeared, each one matched to a cloak, a road, a campaign, a cleansing date, and a washer's mark. The quartermaster stumbled backward. I only copied what the chamber gave me. Asha looked at the ledger. The quartermaster had not written the violence, but he had copied the space where violence could be written. Torren's head turned toward the man. The quartermaster could not meet his eyes. Valen spoke before the silence could turn into accusation. I used the law you all built. Torren's wolf snarled beneath the cloak, but Valen did not step back. Do not look at me as if I invented hunger, Majesty. The boarders asked for speed. The council asked for victory. The temple asked for clean records. The crown asked not to be slowed by frozen roads and dying messengers. Torren's hands curled against the cracked slab. Valen's voice hardened. Blank authority was not a weapon until someone called it efficient. Asha hated how quiet the chamber became after that, because the sentence was true enough to hurt. Torren had not created every hand in the machine. But he had liked the machine when it brought him fast, victories, quiet borders, and reports, washed clean before they reached his table. He looked down at the black fur locked across his shoulders. I signed speed, he said, voice rough, and called it command. The cloak shuddered, not as if punishing him, as if recognizing the first honest sentence he had spoken. The priestess lifted her bowl again. Without blank authority, your boarders would have eaten your throne. Torren looked at her, and with it her mouth tightened. Asha answered before the priestess could. A king who signs empty space should not be shocked when wolves fill it with teeth. Torren flinched. The cloak dragged another breath from him, and silver water swirled up his chest, carrying the scent of old wax and older excuses. He reached for the clasp at his throat, instinctive pain flashing through his face. Asha saw the movement. Do not. His hand stopped. She could barely stay upright now. Her wounded wrist had gone numb, which frightened her more than pain. Do not take off the guilt before it finishes speaking. Torren's eyes found hers through the wet silver light. There was anger there. Not at her. At the part of himself that wanted the cloak gone. His hand lowered. Then finish it, he said. Asha pressed her wrist deeper into the seam. The old laundry law answered. The cloak did not open another battlefield. It opened the archive. Rows of washed orders unfolded above them like hanging sheets in a freezing wind. Each one bore the same pattern: royal permission, temple pre-seal, archive copy, commander fill, washer mark, priestess seal. Clean. 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 The word appeared beneath every order like a grave with no name. Asha searched the floating records, not knowing what she feared, until the cloak found it for her. One record turned silver black, older than the Northern Campaign, marked not with a war route but with a servant transfer. A debt reassignment. A laundry oath number. The priestess stepped forward too quickly. That record is irrelevant. The cloak disagreed. The silver water pulled the record lower, until it hovered between Asha's bleeding wrist and Torren's bowed head. Asha read the line once. Then again. Her breath emptied. The next washed order carried Asha Brindle's own oath number. For one heartbeat, Asha could not understand why a washed order would carry her oath number. Then the cold in her stomach became knowledge. Not memory. Knowledge. The kind a servant learned too late after years of obeying rules written to make obedience look like consent. Her oath number burned in silver black water beneath the archive record. Asha Brindle. Laundry oath 7-9. War rinse eligible. Mark accepted in absence of hand. The chamber went very quiet. Torren's head lifted under the weight of the cloak. In absence of hand, the quartermaster closed his eyes. The priestess answered first. A washer's oath belongs to the crown once the debt is sealed. Her number may certify process when her physical mark is unavailable. Asha stared at the woman. Unavailable, the priestess's mouth tightened. Too young. Ill. Assigned elsewhere. Dead. The law preserves continuity. Asha almost laughed. It came out as a broken breath. Continuity. That was what they called stealing a servant's name before she was old enough to know it had been used. The cloak tightened around Torren's shoulders, forcing him to feel the word as more than ink. Continuity became a chain. A child's wrist, held down over oath thread. A ledger closing. A washer's name turned into a tool that could sign silence while her own hands scrubbed floors 3 halls below. Asha's bleeding wrist shook against the seam. If my hand was absent, she said slowly, then I did not mark that order clean. No, the priestess said. Your oath did. Asha looked at the silver record again. My oath cannot see cloth. It does not need to see. It needs to bind. Valen said nothing, and that silence was worse than defense. Torren turned toward him. You knew washer numbers could certify without the washer. Valen's expression remained controlled. Every commander knows how records travel. That was not my question. No, Valen said. It was your accusation wearing a question's cloak. Torren's wolf snarled. The warcloth pulled harder around his throat, punishing the easy anger, dragging him back into the archive instead of letting him spend guilt as rage. Silver water rose around his chest. The record opened wider. Asha saw a table in the War Laundry archive years before the Northern Campaign. Rows of ledgers. Rows of oath numbers. No faces. No names spoken aloud except by clerks. The younger quartermaster stood beside a stack of washed orders, pressing small bone markers into wax beside each number. Laundry oath 7-9. Accepted. Laundry oath 8-1. Accepted. Laundry oath 6-3. Accepted. No washer touched the cloth. No washer read the stain. No washer heard what the fabric tried to keep. Their numbers signed for them. Asha's breath shook. A washer's mark does not make cloth clean, she said. It only proves who was forced to say it was. The cloak answered her, not with a vision, with pressure. The seam beneath her wrist widened, and the silver record showed the other half of her own oath number, not the order it had cleaned but the debt that had created it. Debt reassignment from Brindle line to Crown War Laundry. Cause refusal of final rinse. Asha stopped breathing. Refusal. Not unpaid coin. Not inherited poverty. Refusal. Her mother had not died owing the crown because she was weak, careless, or unlucky. She had refused to finish a rinse. The priestess stepped forward. That record is sealed by grief law. It has no bearing on war authority. Asha looked at her. It has my name. It has your number. The words split something open inside her. Asha had spent years being corrected when she said she was a person in places where the ledger preferred function. Girl. Washer. Oath hand. Debt body. Number. She had thought those names were insults. Now she understood they were legal shapes. Ways to make a living witness easier to file. Torren's voice came rough from beneath the cloak. What did her mother refuse to rinse? The priestess's eyes flashed. Majesty, you are under active memory weight. Do not let a servant's private grief distort campaign inquiry. Asha's laugh was quiet and ugly. Private grief, you wrote my life into the same machine as your wars. Valen finally spoke. Because the machine does not care whether cloth comes from a battlefield or a bedroom. A stain is a stain, if the crown needs it gone. Torren looked at him. You defend this. I describe it. You used it. Valen's gaze sharpened. So did you. Every clean campaign report you accepted passed through hands you never asked to see. The words struck Torren harder because the cloak did not let him look away from them. Asha could feel the seam weakening, not closing, changing. The more it revealed, the less it wanted only blood. It wanted craft. It wanted the full old law, the one the priestess had buried under procedure. Asha looked at the moonstone channels. Rinse. Bind. Name. Return. Her mother's whisper rose inside her, not as magic but as memory. If they ask you to wash a lie, find what the cloth is trying to keep. Asha pulled the bone brush from the water with her free hand. The priestess saw it. Do not touch that record. Asha ignored her. She dragged the brush across the glowing oath number, not to erase it, but to separate the wash mark from the person beneath it. The bristles caught silver water and pulled it into lines. Name apart from number. Hand apart from oath. Witness apart from forced certification. The chamber shuddered. The ledger pages above them tore open in a storm of wet light. Every order signed by an absent washer hand began to separate from its false mark. The quartermaster cried out and fell to his knees as pages ripped from his archive ledger, spinning above the slab like severed wings. The priestess flung her bowl toward Asha. Torren moved this time with the cloak still on him. He did not tear it off. He carried the weight. He stepped between the bowl, and Asha and the pale water struck the black fur across his chest. The cloak hissed. Torren staggered but stayed upright. Asha stared at him, stunned. He looked back at her through pain. Finish the rinse. Not save me. Not trust me. Finish the rinse. So she did. Asha drove the bone brush through the silver record one final time. The archive opened to the order her mother had refused. Not a war cloak. Not a battlefield banner. A small gray servant shawl folded beside a cradle marked for final rinse, after a royal child was declared stillborn. The priestess went white. Valen's expression changed for the first time. Torren's wolf went utterly silent beneath the cloak. The shawl unfolded in the silver water, and inside its seam Asha saw a living infant's breath stitched shut with moon thread. The infant in the shawl was not Asha. The cloak made that clear before anyone could reach for the easy lie. The silver water sharpened around the cradle cloth, showing a room washed in pale moonlight. A narrow bed, a carved cradle, and a gray servant shawl folded with terrible care beside a child. Too small to understand the law already closing around him. His chest moved once beneath the moon thread. Then again, a living breath. Not strong, not safe, but living. Asha felt her own lungs seize as if the thread had been pulled through her throat instead of the child's. Her mother's old refusal suddenly had a shape. Not rebellion, not insolence, not unpaid debt. Witness. Her mother had refused to rinse a death that had not happened yet. The moon priestess moved faster than age should have allowed. Close that record. Torren turned his head beneath the war cloak. Why? That is grief law, not war law. Asha kept the bone brush pressed against the silver record. Her wrist was numb now, but the seam still drank enough warmth from her to make the chamber tilt. A final rinse belongs to dead cloth. The priestess's eyes cut to her. You do not know temple rites. I know laundry rites. Asha's voice shook but held. A death shawl only takes final rinse after breath has left the seam. That shawl was still holding breath, the quartermaster whispered. It was marked stillborn. Asha looked at him. By whom he shut his mouth. The child in the memory stirred. Moon thread tightened over his mouth, not around flesh, but around the breath above it, sowing silence where sound should have escaped. Beside the cradle stood the younger moon priestess, one hand lifted in blessing. A younger quartermaster waited near the door with a black ledger. At the foot of the bed stood an elder of the war council holding a blank authority scroll. Not a battlefield. Not a road. Still the same machine. The king signed space. The temple sealed it. The archive copied it. A servant was brought to wash what remained. Asha's mother entered the memory carrying a basin. She looked thinner than Asha remembered. Younger than grief had made her in Asha's mind. Her hands were cracked from water and ash, but they moved with the same careful discipline Asha had inherited. The priestess handed her the gray shawl. Final rinse, memory priestess said. Asha's mother did not touch the basin. The cloth is still holding breath. The war elder's face hardened. The child has been declared gone. Declared is not dead. Asha could not move. Torren's hand tightened against the slab. Whose child? No one answered. The cloak tightened around him until his breath broke. Valen spoke at last, and even he sounded cautious now. Majesty, royal grief records can break succession lines if mishandled. Torren's amber eyes burned. Whose child? The priestess lifted her chin. A prince who would have divided the western packs before he could walk. Not Torren's child. Not Asha's secret brother. a political infant, a living bloodline problem, a threat too small to fight and too inconvenient to let breathe. Asha's stomach turned. You stitched his breath shut because his existence made inheritance difficult. I sealed a fracture before it became civil war. The same argument again. One village to save 5 packs, one infant to prevent 5 claimants, one servant oath to clean one impossible stain. Asha looked at the woman. You call murder prevention when the victim is small enough. The priestess's face sharpened. I call it survival when fools would burn a kingdom to keep one breath untouched. In the memory, Asha's mother set the shawl back on the cradle. I will not rinse living breath. The elder struck her. Asha flinched. Torren did too. The cloak forced him to feel the sound through command weight, not as spectacle, but as consequence. He had not signed that infant's silence. He had not been king then, but the same throne had fed on the same law, and now that law sat across his shoulders in wet black fur. Asha's mother straightened slowly. Blood marked her lip. The priestess said, Then your line will owe the crown for refusal of sacred work. My line will owe truth before it owes you silence. Asha's breath broke. The words entered her like an inheritance no ledger had managed to steal. The memory shifted. The gray shawl was taken away. Asha's mother was dragged toward the oath chamber. Her name was crossed out. Her service debt transferred. Beneath it a new line appeared. Brindle child to be bound upon age of hand use. Asha's knees finally gave. Torren caught her before she struck the slab, but only because the cloak dragged him close enough to move. His hand steadied her shoulder firm and careful, not pulling her into him, not making the moment tender when it was too raw for tenderness. Asha almost shoved him away. Then she saw his face. Not pity. Horror with no place to hide. She was bound because your mother refused false cleansing, he said. Asha forced herself upright. No. I was bound because they needed her refusal to look like debt. The distinction mattered. It mattered more than comfort. The priestess lifted her bowl again, but this time the water inside it shook. Valen watched the floating records with narrowed eyes. He was not frightened of grief. He was calculating damage. This is why the system exists, he said. Every hidden breath becomes a weapon if given witness. Asha turned toward him. No. Every hidden breath becomes a weapon because men like you keep making graves that need washers. The war cloak answered. The silver archive folded inward, carrying the infant's shawl, Asha's mother's refusal, the northern blank orders, and Torren's signed command into one single thread. It ran through the cloak's lining like a vein. Torren gasped. The cloak was no longer showing separate crimes. It was showing continuity. A line of clean records built on forced hands. The priestess backed toward the door. Majesty, remove the cloak now, or it will bind you to every washed record in the archive. Torren looked down at Asha. Asha's voice was almost gone. If he takes it off now, the machine stays older than his guilt. The cloak pulled its collar tighter. Torren's wolf snarled, not against the cloak this time, but with it. He rose under the full weight of the war cloth. Then show the machine, he said. The moonstone floor split open beneath the rinsing table. Not into a pit. Into the hidden laundry archive below Blackmere Keep. Rows upon rows of washed royal garments hung in the dark, each one tagged clean. And every tag bore an oath number instead of a name. The hidden archive did not smell like death. It smelled like work. Cold water. Old wool. Boiled bone soap. Wolf fur dried too many times over moonstone heat. Beneath it all was the sour buried scent of names removed so carefully that no one with power had to feel the loss. Asha stood at the edge of the split floor, one bleeding wrist still bound to the war cloak's open seam by pain and old law. Below her, rows of royal garments hung in the dark cloaks. Banners, children's shawls, burial wraps, battle sashes, treaty veils, command sleeves. Every piece had been rinsed, folded, tagged, and declared clean. Not one tag carried a washer's name. Only numbers. Laundry oath 7 to 9. Laundry oath 8 to 1. Laundry oath 6 to 3. Asha had known the crown disliked names in the washing chambers. Names made hands harder to use. Names made blame harder to move. But seeing the archive beneath Blackmere Keep made the truth worse than she had imagined. The kingdom had not merely forced washers to erase stains. It had used their oath numbers as burial stones for truth. Torren Malvek stood beside her under the black war cloak, his shoulders bowed but unbroken. The cloak dragged at him with every breath, forcing the weight of each clean record through his bones. He looked down into the archive with the face of a man realizing that his throne had not been built over secrets. It had been laundered over them. The Moon Priestess spoke first. "Those garments are sealed records of state. No one below crown authority may read them." Asha laughed once softly. "You used washer numbers to seal them. That does not make them yours." "No," Asha said. "It makes them stolen from us." The quartermaster clutched his empty ledger against his chest, as if paper could protect him from the room beneath his feet. "The numbers are administrative. Names create vulnerability. Names create witnesses," Asha said. Valen's gaze moved across the hanging garments. For the first time, he did not look bored by the suffering around him. He looked alert, calculating, measuring how much of the kingdom might collapse if cloth began returning what it had been ordered to forget. "You do not understand what you are opening," he said. Asha looked at him. "That is what men say when women find the drawer." His mouth tightened. Torren's hand moved to the clasp at his throat, then stopped before Asha had to speak. The cloak punished even the thought of removal. Silver water rose in thin lines from the archive below and wrapped around the hem of the war cloak like fingers. Asha saw the pattern. Not attack. Recognition. "The cloak is not finished with you," she said. Torren's eyes flicked to hers. "No. Do you want it to be?" His jaw worked once. "Yes." The honesty was rough enough to be useful. Then he added, "But wanting a weight gone is not the same as having the right to remove it." Asha had no answer ready for that. She distrusted his pain. She distrusted his control. She distrusted the way his wolf looked at the archive as if it wanted to tear the whole keep apart and call that justice. But she could not dismiss that sentence. Not yet. The priestess stepped toward the split floor. Closed the archive. The silver tags stirred. Asha felt the movement through the seam in the war cloak. Every clean tag was not a closed record. It was a tied knot. And knots, if handled by the hands that knew them, could be loosened. Her mother had once told her the forbidden rule no priestess ever allowed written in training books. A washer's mark can clean cloth. A washer's name can unclean it. Asha's blood went cold. The priestess saw recognition enter her face. "Do not." Asha looked down into the archive. "You are afraid I know the rest of the law. I am afraid you will confuse vengeance for craft." "No," Asha said. "Craft is why I waited this long." She pulled the bone brush from the slab, its bristles wet with moonwell water and command wax. Her wrist screamed as the seam stretched with her movement. The war cloak tightened around Torren, binding them both to the same open record. Torren saw the pain in her face. "What will it cost?" Asha hated that he asked quietly. "It will put my name where my number was used." The quartermaster recoiled. "That is unlawful." Asha kept her eyes on the archive. "No. It is old law." The priestess's face hardened. "It makes you answerable for every record you reopen." Torren turned sharply. "Every record." Asha's throat tightened. "If my oath number cleaned it, my name can call it back. But once my name touches the archive, the crown can claim I falsely certified every stain my number was used to hide." Valen's eyes sharpened with new interest. "Then she becomes the criminal the records need." Asha looked at him. "You sound relieved." "I sound accurate." Torren stepped between Valen and Asha, but did not touch her. "No one names her criminal for records she never saw." The priestess answered coldly. "Then the records remain clean." There it was. The trap in its purest form. If Asha stayed only a number, the crimes remained buried. If she became a name, the crown could hang the buried crimes around her throat. Asha looked down at the rows of washed garments. For years, she had thought survival meant keeping her head low and her hands obedient. But the archive below her was full of lowered heads and obedient hands, each turned into ink, each used after the person behind it had been ignored, absent, dead, or afraid. She pressed the bone brush against the first floating tag. Laundry oath 7 to 9. Her number, her cage. Then she spoke the name no ledger had ever been allowed to use as proof. "Asha." Brindle. The tag split. Silver water burst upward from the archive, not into a battlefield vision, but into names. Washer names. Servant names. Dead names. Living names. Names crossed out and replaced by function. Names signed absent. Names turned into clean marks by people who never entered the rinsing chamber. The archive woke. The quartermaster screamed and fell back as his ledger tore open across the floor. The priestess's bowl cracked from rim to base. Valen drew his sword at last. Torren's wolf surged beneath the war cloak, but the cloak held him still. Not from weakness, from judgment. The first unclean record rose from the archive and wrapped around Asha's bleeding wrist. It did not show a war. It showed the order that bound Asha Brindle to the crown. And beneath the crown's seal, where her mother's debt should have been, there was no debt at all. Only one word. Refusal. Asha's fingers tightened around the bone brush until the handle bit into her palm. The record beneath her wrist had changed everything without raising its voice. There had been no inherited debt, no unpaid crown service, no family obligation passed from mother to daughter, only a punishment dressed as law. Torren stood under the war cloak, the black fur dragging at his shoulders as if the garment itself wanted him bent low enough to read what his throne had ignored. His eyes stayed on the silver record circling Asha's oath number. There was no debt, he said. The quartermaster swallowed. Refusal creates debt under temple procedure. Asha turned to him slowly. Only when the work is lawful. The moon priestess's face hardened. Asha looked at her. A final rinse belongs to dead cloth. My mother refused because the shawl still held living breath. The child had been declared gone, the priestess said. Declared as not dead. The words were her mother's, but this time they came from Asha's mouth. The archive answered. Silver water ran down from the open seam in the war cloak and poured into the split floor below. The rows of tagged garments stirred in the dark, each one marked clean by numbers instead of names. Asha felt the old rule rise through her like cold water through a buried channel. A false debt makes a false oath. A false oath makes a false washer. A false washer cannot clean royal cloth. The priestess saw understanding in her eyes. Do not speak that law. Asha's mouth trembled. You are afraid of laundry law when it comes from the laundry. Valen stepped closer, sword still lowered. Careful. If you break your oath, you do not free only yourself. You poison every record your number touched. Yes, Asha said. The chamber went still. Torren's gaze snapped to her. Valen's composure cracked by one thin line. Do you know how many campaign cleansings bear your oath number? No, Asha said. You made sure I never knew where my name was used. The quartermaster's ledger shook on the wet stone. Pages flipped open without his hands. Laundry oath 7 to 9 appeared beneath battle cloaks, surrender veils, treaty sashes, burial wraps, and command sleeves. 346 records. Asha stared at the number until it blurred. Her oath had not been used once to bury her mother's refusal. It had become a convenient hand. A silent mark. A servant's name stripped down to a number and pressed under lies she had never seen. The priestess lifted her cracked bowl. Those records kept borders intact. Asha looked at the rows below. Those records kept your hands clean. Valen's eyes sharpened. And if everyone opens, border pacts challenge old victories. Widows demand names. Sons take up roads their fathers died on. Truth does not arrive, gentle girl. It arrives hungry. Asha hated that he was not entirely wrong. Truth would break things. But the clean lies had already broken people. Torren's voice came low beneath the cloak. The records open. The priestess turned on him. Majesty, you would unmake your reign. Torren did not look away from the archive. My reign was already being worn by men who knew where I refused to walk. Valen's mouth tightened. You wanted war to move faster than conscience. Torren's wolf snarled, but he did not deny it. Asha lifted the bone brush over the glowing oath number. Her hand shook so badly that silver water trembled from the bristles. Torren saw her falter. Asha, do not make my name gentle, she said. He stopped. Good. She did not need comfort laid over her like another cloth. She needed the old law finished. Asha pressed the brush into the silver record. A false debt cannot bind a hand, she whispered. A false hand cannot clean a stain. Let every cloth marked by this number return what it was forced to hold. The archive woke. Tags turned silver black. Garments jerked on their hooks. Cloaks opened. Veils unfurled. Sashes twisted loose from their pins. Moonwell water streamed upward in hundreds of thin lines, each tied to a record her oath number had falsely certified. Asha cried out, not because the cloth chose her, because every false mark was trying to find the name it had been denied. Hers. Torren moved toward her, but the cloak locked across his chest and held him in place. Asha forced breath through her teeth. If you pull me away, the archive closes. Valen moved instead. His sword flashed toward Asha's wrist. Torren's wolf roared beneath the war cloak. One silver clasp tore from the cloak's collar and struck the blade aside before it could reach her hand. Steel rang against wolf-tooth silver. Sparks burst across the moonstone. The priestess whispered judgment state. The hidden archive began to rise. Not as vision, as evidence. Garments lifted from the dark below, floor by floor, chamber by chamber, climbing through the split stone toward the keep above. Asha nearly collapsed but kept the brush pressed down. One garment rose before the rest. The small gray servant shawl. The cloth her mother had refused to rinse. It unfolded at Asha's eye level, its seams trembling. Inside, the infant's breath remained trapped in moon thread, faint but still living inside the record. This time the breath carried a name. Torren read it aloud. Prince Torren Malvek. The chamber lost all sound. The child they had declared dead had belonged to the Alpha bloodline. Torren did not ask whether the name was true. His wolf already knew. The sound moved under his skin before the chamber found its voice again. A low, broken snarl that did not belong to battle hunger or royal anger. It sounded like recognition dragged out of a grave. Prince Torren Malvek. The gray servant shawl trembled in the silver water moon thread tightening around the tiny breath stitched inside its seam. The infant did not appear as a living child now. The archive did not offer mercy that easily. It offered proof, a breath recorded before it was silenced, a name hidden before it could become inheritance, a royal life rinsed from history. Because too many powerful hands had agreed that absence was easier than division, Asha gripped the bone brush. Her knees shook, but she stayed upright. The priestess's voice cut through the chamber. That record is beyond war laundry jurisdiction. Asha turned her head slowly. It was washed with a servant shawl. It was a succession matter. It was cloth. The priestess's mouth tightened. Asha pressed the brush more firmly to the oath number burning beneath her wrist. And cloth remembers the hands that force it clean. Valen stepped toward Torren, no longer pretending this was only about the northern campaign. Majesty, listen carefully. If that record opens, every western bloodline will rise with an old claim. Every oath sworn after Kael'ren's death record will be questioned. Your throne will become a feeding ground. Torren's eyes stayed on the shawl. Was he killed? The priestess did not answer. The quartermaster whispered. The record says, stillborn. Asha looked at him. The record also says my mother owed debt. His face closed. Torren moved one step forward beneath the war cloak. Its black fur dragged behind him like wet night. Was he killed? The priestess lifted her chin. He was prevented from becoming a civil war. The answer struck harder than confession. Torren's wolf surged. The war cloak slammed him back to one knee, not to weaken him, but to hold him under the weight before rage could become escape. Asha saw it. Do not use anger to leave the memory. Torren's breathing came hard. Valen's eyes flicked between them. She commands you now. Asha did not look away from Torren. No, I am reminding him not to command his way out of being guilty. Torren's gaze lifted to hers. Pain flashed there. Then agreement. He stayed kneeling. The shawl opened wider. Silver water showed the royal nursery chamber again. The infant's breath trembled beneath moon thread. The priestess sealed the thread. The quartermaster recorded the false death. The war elder signed the authority. Asha's mother refused the final rinse. Then the memory shifted to another chamber. A wolf chamber. Torren stiffened. Asha felt the war cloak tighten around his shoulders before she understood why. The memory showed a young Torren, not yet king, standing before a black stone altar, where every heir of Malvek blood was brought to be scented by the royal wolf line. He was a boy with a hard mouth and frightened eyes, trying not to show either. The priestess stood beside him. The same priestess. She dipped her fingers into moonwater and marked his brow. The rival branch is gone. Your path is clean. Young Torren looked toward the covered cradle beside the altar. What rival branch? There was none worth naming. The memory blurred. Present Torren closed his eyes. His wolf had known. Not the words, not the records, but the wrongness. The missing scent in the bloodline. The gap where another heir's breath had been cut from the pack and washed away. Asha understood then why the Alpha King's wolf had begun refusing the war cloak. It had not rejected Torren's strength. It had rejected what his authority kept wearing. Valen saw that understanding move across her face. Do not make him innocent with instinct. Wolves smell blood, not policy. No, Asha said. But sometimes they smell what men teach ledgers to forget. The priestess stepped toward the shawl with her broken bowl. The record must be sealed before the upper keep sees it. Too late. The archive had already risen beyond the split floor. Above them stone groaned. Far overhead voices erupted in alarm as washed garments climbed through cracks in the war laundry walls, dragging silver water with them. Cloaks, veils, sashes, and shawls rose like drowned witnesses into Blackmere Keep. The truth was leaving the basement. Asha nearly smiled. Then her wrist gave way. Pain burst white through her arm. The brush slipped from her fingers. The seam began to close. The silver records flickered. Valen moved instantly. He seized Asha by the wounded wrist and twisted her arm away from the cloak. Torren roared, but the war cloak held him under memory weight. Valen's grip tightened. One washer opened it. One washer can close it. Asha gasped, unable to breathe through the pain. The priestess lifted her bowl over the seam. Seal the rinse. Torren fought the cloak muscles, straining wolf rising behind his eyes. Release her. Valen looked at him. Choose carefully. If I release her, the archive reaches the court. If I close the seam, your throne survives long enough to decide what truth it can afford. Asha looked at Torren through the blur. This was the old trap again. Speed before witness. Survival before truth. Clean record before living hand. Torren stopped struggling. For a terrible second, Asha thought he had chosen the throne. Then he bowed his head beneath the war cloak and spoke not to Valen, not to the priestess, but to the garment wearing him. Use my name. The chamber went still. Asha's heart struck once. The war cloak shuddered. Torren lifted his head, eyes bright amber and silver. If her oath number opened records falsely cleaned in her name, then my name opens every command falsely carried under mine. Valen's face changed. No, he said. Torren's voice roughened. Asha Brindle is not the only name you used. The war cloak tore open across Torren's chest. Not flesh. Authority. Silver water burst from every seam, rushing upward through the keep. The shawl, the blank scrolls, the war orders, the servant debts, the false cleansings, all of them caught the king's name and ignited. The upper court doors exploded open above them. Every noble in Blackmere Keep saw the archive rise. And across the highest wall, written in silver water over the Alpha throne, appeared the first order Torren's name had ever been used to clean. It was not a war command. It was the death record of Prince Torren Malvek. For one breath, Blackmere forgot how to be a court. Nobles stood frozen beneath silver water running down the walls. War captains stared at garments hanging in the air like drowned banners. Servants pressed against pillars, recognizing oath numbers they had scrubbed into obedience for years. Above the Alpha throne, the death record of Prince Torren Malvek shimmered where every title could see it. Then panic broke open. Seal the hall. Burn the records. Protect the throne. Torren Malvek rose from the split floor with the war cloak locked across his shoulders. Silver water streamed from the black fur. Every step carried the sound of old commands dragging behind him. Asha came after him, barely standing, one hand wrapped around the bone brush, her wounded wrist bound in a strip torn from the cloak's inner lining. No one laughed at the laundry maid now. That did not make her safe. It made power understand she was dangerous. The moon priestess climbed into the hall behind them, face white but voice steady. By succession law, royal death records stand above cloth witness. The servant has opened what she has no rank to interpret. Asha looked at the silver record over the throne. You used cloth to bury him. The temple protected the kingdom. The temple protected the empty space where truth should have been. The priestess lifted her cracked bowl. A washer's craft cannot judge royal blood. No, Asha said. But it can prove when royal blood was washed from cloth before it was cold. A murmur moved through the hall. Valen Corveth stepped forward with his sword drawn, speaking not to Torren now but to the nobles. If these records stand, every treaty, campaign victory, and inheritance line touched by blank authority can be reopened. Your sons will answer for roads you never walked. Your dead will be dragged from clean graves. This servant does not bring justice. She brings hunger. Asha hated him for using true things to defend a lie. Truth would be hungry, but clean lies had already eaten enough. Torren turned slowly beneath the cloak. Valen faced him. The throne will become answerable to every cloth it has worn. Torren's eyes moved over the captains, elders, priestess, quartermaster, and finally, Asha. She expected him to promise protection. He did not. Good. Protection would not be enough. I will not let her carry alone what my name helped make, Torren said. The war cloak answered. Every garment in the hall twisted toward him. Cloaks, shawls, sashes, veils, sleeves. All the washed records marked clean by absent hands. Asha lifted the bone brush. The priestess's eyes widened. If you complete the reversal, you unclean the crown. Torren lowered to one knee before the throne. Not to Asha. To the records. I signed speed and called it command, he said. I accepted clean reports because clean reports made victory easier to wear. Let every cloth bearing my name return what it was forced to hold. The hall went silent. Asha stepped to the throne steps. Her legs nearly failed. Torren moved, then stopped himself before touching her. She saw the restraint and understood. He had spent his life reaching as a king. Now he was learning to wait as a man. Asha placed the brush against the silver death record of Prince Caelrin. Name apart from silence, she whispered. Breath apart from thread. Witness apart from forced cleansing. The gray servant shawl unfolded in the air. Moon thread snapped. A tiny breath escaped. Not a child restored to life. Not a miracle that erased the crime. Only the sound the kingdom had stolen before it could become a cry. It passed through the hall like winter air through fur. Every wolf in Blackmere lowered its head. Even Torren's. The death record changed. Prince Torren Malvek. Living breath sealed under false grief law. Death declared by temple seal. Final rinse refused by Brindle hand. The priestess dropped her bowl. It shattered. Valen lunged. Asha saw the blade coming but could not move fast enough. Torren moved without command. So did the war cloak. The black fur tore from his shoulders and flung itself between Asha and the sword. Valen's blade sank into the cloak and stopped as if it had struck a living wolf. Silver water burst from the torn fur wrapping around his wrist, then his throat, then the hand that had taught lawful orders to become slaughter. The quartermaster collapsed and shoved the ledger away. I copied what I was given. Asha looked at him. Then you will copy what is returned. Torren rose cloakless before the court. No more blank authority, he said. No command may travel without road witness limit and named hand. No washer's number may sign in absence. No priestess may seal a silence she helped create. No victory is clean until the cloth has been read by the hands that wash it. Servants stepped from the walls. Laundry workers. Kitchen hands. Kennel boys. Oath-bound women with water scars around their wrists. They did not kneel. Torren lifted the torn war cloak from the silver water and held it out not as a gift but as evidence. What should be done with it, he asked. The court stared. The Alpha King had asked a laundry maid what to do with royal cloth. Asha took the cloak only after he let it rest across both his palms uncommanded. It will not be worn, she said. Not until every road inside it is named. Torren bowed his head. Then I will stand bare before the packs until it is. Asha studied him. There was devotion beginning in him, dangerous and restrained, trying to rise through guilt, without using guilt as absolution. She did not reward it with forgiveness. Not yet. Do not follow me because you are ashamed, she said. His voice was quiet. Then I will follow the work until you decide whether I may follow anything else. It was the first answer he had given that did not ask to be forgiven. Asha turned toward the risen archive. My name is Asha Brindle, she said. Not laundry oath 7 to 9. Not absent hand. Not clean mark. I am a war laundry witness, and every cloth forced to lie under my number will be heard. The garments answered in silver. Above Blackmere Keep dawn broke through storm clouds, turning the wet records bright as blades and soft as breath. The wolves did not howl for a king. They howled for the names returning. And Torren Malvek, cloakless before his court, stood one step behind Asha while she opened the first clean record and taught the kingdom how to read its stains.